It's just a real pleasure. We had Jen you did a plant program a couple of years ago, remember?
I
don't remember. And I don't know how many people that Janet and Frank Connolly introduced to the flora and fauna of the Wallowas.
Right.
A little bit of history and everything else, and geology and everything else. But between the two of them, they rode a lot of buses. Didn't you?
Yeah. We've been on a lot of field trips.
A lot of field trips, yeah. And anyway, so she's made a study of our place here for, I'm not going to guesstimate how many years. Quite a few. More than 30.
30-some.
Yeah.
Yeah, 38.
38. Okay, please, I'm just going to turn it over, Jen.
All right. And like I say, you know, I'll try to prop these things up so you can look back and see them, but come up and, you know, afterwards or even during whatever, I need distraction. So, Rich, you know, he called me to do a little thing on the birds of the prairie to kind of go with the display here, and I kind of went, well, when I give a talk, I always depend on props. And usually it's slides, and I don't have enough good bird slides. You have to be a pretty good photographer to get a good picture. But anyway, and I thought, well, what am I going to talk about? And then I went, well, we can talk about maybe some of the nests that we might find, both out on the Zoom walk and in general. And you know, bird nests, I just thought, what a cool thing to talk about at the Josephy Center for Arts and Culture, because they are amazing works of art. And some of the ones I brought, of course, you can find some bird nests that you can be looking right at the nest and there's nothing there. I mean, if a bird's eggs aren't there, or it's just on bare ground. And then you can find things like this hummingbird nest, which are unbelievably delicate. I mean, like if I was trying to, on purpose, reproduce that, it would take probably days and it wouldn't look near as neat as a hummingbird nest. So anyway, that's what you're going to get. It's not going to be a talk about birds on the Zoom wall. Certainly ask me questions, though. I'm more going to talk about nests, because this time of year nests are getting a little more obvious. They'll be even more obvious in the winter when obviously the leaves are off the trees and stuff. And nests are just a lot easier than birds to look at because they don't fly away. And so you can go, well, that's cool, and really, you know, really get into it. So anyway, what else was I going to say? I think, well, I guess a thank you. I borrowed this hummingbird nest from Wallowa. They have many other nests there too, big ones that are not near as portable as these little ones. So if you're really into it, go over there and look at their collection of nests. And these displays I borrowed from Wallowa Resources because they use them in all their education, you know, when they go into the classrooms and stuff. So they're just nice. Nests, as a lot of you have probably had a nest, you pick them out of the tree, you get them, they hang around for a while, and they just kind of fall apart. So this sort of helps to keep them, you know, at least a little bit together. So, let me see. Nest, what's the point of a nest? I guess, obviously, all birds that I can think of lay eggs. Is that right, Ralph? Are there any that don't lay eggs? I don't think so. But there are many that don't build nests that we would recognize as a nest. They all have their own thing. So, within a species, usually, the nests are recognizable. Just like if you see a robin, it looks more like a robin, say, than a blackbird or some other thing. Their nests are also unique that way. Although with nests, you know, I will make generalizations, but that's all they are. A bird will see a site, they'll make a lot of things work that maybe don't fit the classic description of where they nest. So just remember that, you know, when you see a nest, one thing about identifying a nest, you can use things like the habitat it's in, of course the region it's in. Like I don't usually look for flamingo nests in Wallowa County. But you know, the habitat, the actual specific site, if it's in a tree, if it's on the ground, birds will nest different kinds of birds nest everywhere from in burrows to on the ground to on cliffs, nests in trees, shrubs, in cavities, in caves. There's a lot of variety. Of course, I didn't bring any examples of the nests that aren't really, you can't see them. I mean, like, how many have seen killdeer nests before? Has anyone? Okay. You almost never see them unless there's eggs or young in them. Killdeer are one of the ground nesting birds. Their nest is basically a depression in a gravelly, like a railroad right of way, a road right of way. That's what they like. So of course, they're common birds, and you go, well, maybe they don't nest around here. Well, they sure do. But they don't build an obvious nest like a robin or like a bunch of these guys. I guess without getting real technical, in general, a lot of the ground nesting birds, I would say, are what an ornithologist calls precocial young. And a lot of these kind of birds have what they call altricial young. Precocial young, what does that sound like? It sounds like they're kind of ahead of their time, right? And when they hatch and dry out from hatching, from being in the egg, they're ready to go. They're not ready to fly, but they leave the nest. And that's partly why the parents don't make a big investment in building a big, huge nest, because the babies, once they hatch, they're gone, they leave. Whereas something like a robin, the young will spend a couple weeks in the nest before they leave. So precocial young are things like quail, things like killdeer. Those are the common kinds that I can think of. A lot of gulls and birds that don't nest maybe right here have young that are able to eat and walk around and do all that right from the word go. Whereas a baby robin couldn't do that.
Ducks and geese?
Yeah, ducks and geese, right.
What about grouse and
Yep, grouse, partridge, pheasants, yep. So, okay, so, again, I didn't bring in examples of ground nesting birds. I thought it would be fun to bring in a pan of dirt and just say, this is a killdeer. I didn't really have to do that, so, yeah. And then there's, of course, lots of birds, big birds, who are going to build big nests. And so a couple examples right across the street at Wallowa, I believe they have a great blue heron nest. We've all probably seen osprey nests often we see them on power poles around here. That's an ideal. And eagle nest too. How many people know about the bald eagle nest on Eggleston Road between the highway and Hurricane Creek? That is such a cool nest. And bald eagles are one of the birds that come back and they'll reuse that nest every year. Whereas you're probably going, what a creep, she's picked up all these nests, and the birds are going to come back and go, where'd my nest go? Well, in almost every case that I can think of, songbirds and small birds don't reuse their nests. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. One of them, if the predator knows a nest is there, one year they're not going to go back. Or they will go back. The predator will and check it out. So it would be a bad move if you're a parent bird to go back and provide groceries, for the predator. Another really big reason why small birds don't reuse their nest is nest parasites. Things like feather lice and just stuff that might harm the young. The adult birds have those insects on them, but they can kind of stand it or preen them off or whatever. But if you have an old nest full of parasites, they're just going to basically eat up the babies. So that's probably the two main reasons why they don't. Well, another reason is pretty obvious. Some of these nests are pretty fragile. So, they last fine for a season. There may be a couple, but they're going to fall apart. So, and then the other reason is behavioral. A lot of birds like a lot of our behavior, it's kind of like hardwired into them. They have to, you could provide a robin nest, and the robin will build another nest right next to it. They have to do the activity as part of their, you know, whole thing, their whole nesting ritual. They just have to do it that way. So, anyway, so I would say in general, if you find a nest in the fall, you don't want to go collecting nests like in June, July, even August. That's probably a bad idea. You might be interfering with the life cycle of birds. But after that, these kind of nests, I'd say, they're, you know, you don't need to worry about hurting a bird by collecting the nest. Most birds, once the young leave the nest or fledge, they don't come back to the nest. Again, exceptions. That's true with songbirds. With hawks, they do. Hawks, eagles, big birds. The young will come back and even though they can fly away, they'll come back to the nest because that's where they're used to getting fed. And so, you know, when all else fails, it does, even though they can fly, it takes them a while before they know how, or have the skill to catch their own prey. So they often, you'll see eagles in that nest on Amazon laying, you know, well into August. And yet they probably fledge in June, in May, June. So it's just that's a central place for them.
How did the bigger birds that nest, that come back to the same nest or come to parasite?
You know, it's probably, if it gets really bad, the young probably just die. But usually the cold weather, those big old nests are out in the weather in places like where we live, in climates like this. That's probably a big factor. Probably things like just the size of the bird compared to the parasite. An eagle young can probably tolerate a higher load than, say, a robin or whatever. I actually don't know. Do you have any insights on that, Ralph?
Most of the big bird nests in trees are exposed to enough weather.
Yeah.
A lot of the ectos don't survive. An exception might be vultures or condors that nest in caves, but they only do that like every other year. You know, so there's a longer span between nesting cycles.
So these little birds that might have 2 or 3 hatches of birds, of eggs in a year, do they use that same nest for those, or do they build another one?
That I actually don't know. Do you know that when they have multiple nests in one year? I think they often rebuild.
Starlings are about the only ones that'll do multiple nestings. The bluebirds occasionally also. They use the same nest. Starlings, I've counted up to 5 broods out of the same nest in the same year. Bluebirds in this country, 2, I think is the maximum. Occasionally maybe a third brood.
Yeah, and robins certainly have, you know, they're out of bed, yeah. So, I don't know.
And then you have the nest stealers, right? What about the
Right, and
birds
there
that-
are some birds that not only don't build a nest, they don't even use a nest. They lay their eggs in other birds' nests and they never incubate themselves. Does anyone know an example we have around here?
Cowbird.
Yep, the brown-headed cowbird is really well known for that. So they lay they're not quite robin size, but more like that size. And if they lay their egg in a nest with smaller eggs, they often toss out the small eggs. I mean, they're that tuned into it that they'll go, oh, the bird's going to notice the difference. And there are some birds then that go and get like Spy versus Spy from the old magazine. I don't know how many people look that old. But anyway, there are some birds, and yellow warblers are really known for this. If they see a cowbird egg in their nest, they'll just build a new nest right on top of it. Even though that kills their eggs, but they'll re-nest and lay more eggs and hope the cowbird doesn't come back. And of course, the cowbird young then, it tends to be bigger than the other one, more aggressive. The adult birds feed whatever mouth is squawking around. So it grows quicker, and it'll tend to edge out the other birds too. So yeah, cowbirds, that's another one. Yeah, another bird that doesn't build a nest at all. In most cases, it's the female bird that incubates eggs, because she's usually not as colorful as the male, or who knows what came first. But she's not as colorful, so she incubates. There are some species where the male is not as colorful, he incubates. There are a few species where the female lays the eggs and then leaves, and the male's stuck with raising. I mean, you get the whole span of behaviors, different ways of pulling off a bird. Any more general questions? And I will just,
What about the ground nests? I know that like truckers and stuff, they have no scent, or have very little scent, and I think the current grouse, the sage grouse, they're very lucky. They don't have scent, and at the very end of their week, they go off and they poop when the ladies poop. They call it some different name for that.
the big clackers, I think you call that. Yeah.
So how do they do that?
How do they accumulate?
No, how do they not have scent? I can't understand.
Oh, well, yeah, I actually don't know that either. But of course, with birds that don't, the young don't live in their nests once they hatch, all the birds that you mentioned, the scent is pretty much from the poop, right? And so, they never have a chance to really poop up and dirty up a nest like these guys do. Although the adults will take nest, a sack, a fecal sack, and take it out of the nest to try to keep the nest clean. But yeah, so yeah, it's like fawns or elk. When they're first born, they supposedly don't have any scent. I wouldn't know. I mean, I don't have a good enough nose. But maybe on a relative scale, it's just they don't have, and if they're still and they're quiet and the incubating adult is really quiet, that certainly favors them hatching. But as far as actually not this or that, we really don't know. I mean, we can have all kinds of great theories, but what actually happens, I'm not confident in saying.
We were coming down from the climb, the peak next to, just to the left of Ruby Peak, and there was a old ground nest there that we saw with little tiny eggs, and it was a pretty high elevation.
And where, tell me more about where the nest was in really, was there a log there?
Well, there wasn't a trail, we were just bushwhacking down from the top.
Was it into the
tree
grass?
line. I think there was something, because it was kind of protected, there was something here, because we looked at it and there was something behind it.
Right.
And it was just right in front, just right on the,
Right.
but it looked like more shaped like a nest too, but they actually built.
Yeah, and there are several of these. This box is all cavity nesters, so these nests you're going to find all in a hole, up above the ground. These guys are all just out in the open. And some of them, like the junco, which is, I'm guessing, maybe that'd be a likely guess. Very small. What color were the eggs? Remember?
I want to say blue, but I'm not sure.
Right. And did they have speckles on them?
No, I can't
Right.
remember. It's been quite a few years
Yeah.
ago.
So it could have been a junco up that high. It could have been some kind of high elevation sparrow. That would be mine too. But, it'd be guesses, total
Yeah, it's
guesses
always fun to see it.
at this point, yeah. So,
Yeah, how many hours a night, well, a day, in a 24-hour period will a bird rest or sleep?
oh man.
And where does that happen if they abandon their nest? Where do they do that?
Oh, well, whether they abandon their nest or they're done using their nest, they still have to do it, right? And I would say, again, generalization, most birds are going to roost, most songbirds are going to roost at night, say, in trees, maybe close to the trunk, maybe really sheltered by branches, and that's how they sleep. Yeah. But it does depend on the bird. I mean, I suppose there are some birds, well, obviously owls, they're not roosting at night, are they? They're out being active at night. But in the daytime, same thing. What do? They usually are roosting either inside a hole in a tree or, you know, close to a tree trunk, just trying to not be very obvious, but that's what they do. Some birds roost communally, bunch of birds in one place, some birds roost individually. So again, unless we're talking about a specific bird, it's hard to make a generalization.
Is that heron rookery still out there?
Ralph probably knows more about it. Which one? The one in Eggleston or the
Yeah.
one down the valley?
The one off, well, it was on Bueller's place there, the old Snyder Ranch.
Seeing on
Or the
that.
old feedlot,
Yeah, by the
Yeah.
feedlot, right.
or sale yard.
As far as I know, that one still is, but I don't know. I mean, the heron, do you know about that one? It's kind of on Green Valley Road, along on the watershed. There was a heron
Was
rookery
it huge?
there, you know, 10 years ago, let's say. But I don't know. And then there used to be one on the Wallowa River between Lostine and Wallowa. You could, in the winter, you can kind of see it from the highway, but it's back out, you know, to the, I guess that would be to the east. And, yeah, the herons still do nest here, but not very many, I don't think, not right here that I know of. Do you know of other rookeries?
We used to have at least 3 rookeries, one in Lower Valley, the Middle Valley one there on the lower Lostine, and they're gone. The only one that's left is the one up here in the city watershed, and there, Rick McEwen has been photographing on them for the last 5 years. They're down to about 7 now.
Yeah, there's not.
Wow.
many.
So in the late 70s, we had 40 to 50 great blue heron active nests, and we're down to about 7.
Why?
Nobody's paying that much attention. They're having the same kind of trouble out in Union County. They've got the same reduction in numbers. The first guess would be farm chemicals in the waterways and magnification through the trophic levels hits the great blue herons hardest.
There's a large one below Cash Creek on the Snake River.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Before you get to the Washington boundary, or
Well, just about
just
a
close?
quarter mile below.
On the
Cache Creek.
Oregon side?
On the Oregon side, yeah.
Yeah.
West one,
So they're hanging in there. You certainly still see a lot of great blue herons around,
Yeah.
but I don't know where they're at. So, yeah. So I'll talk just briefly about some of these. I mean, again, I'm gonna just set this nest box, or this up here. And, let's see, just go through some of these. The red-winged blackbird nest is always in cattail marsh kind of habitat. And they build, I mean, this should have cattails all, they kind of hook the rim in the bottom of the nest into the cattails. So they don't, it's really hard to find them unless you just sit there and watch them go in, watch the female and male go in to feed the young, let's say, and you can find them, but otherwise, they're really, really well protected. Let me see, I guess, the vireo nests, they're recognizable because they are always suspended by the rim of the nest from branches. So when you, after I get done gabbing, you can come up and look at these, and you can see that, it's really neat. Rather than the nest sitting on something, it's kind of hanging there, it's really distinctive. Let me see, what do we have next? Okay, mountain bluebird, that one should be in with the cavity nesters because it always, mountain bluebirds and all the bluebirds always, again, always, when you're a biologist, you should never use the word always, but I do, so anyway. But they nest in cavities, either natural cavities or bird box, like this. And so that little nest isn't suspended by anything, it's just sitting there on the floor of the cavity or the nest box. This one, I thought I cleaned these up pretty good, but I guess I didn't, because that one's not away from me. Junco, we talked a little bit about that. Ground nesting. To me, a junco almost always locates its nest right next to a log or something. It likes to have one sort of solid thing there. I don't know, that's where I find them. Anyway, but they're always on the ground. Hard to see, I mean, they're really hard to see. Usually the adult, if you're close, will get out of the nest and sneak away, maybe even just 5 feet, and then start chirping or whatever, and you start looking there, and you never find the nest because they're tuned into you, they trick you. Probably everyone here has seen robins nest, and they nest in all kinds of things. They're really adaptable. They've certainly adapted to us as humans. They love the buildings we build and all kinds of things. Window frames, they'll nest on the top of a window frame, top of a door frame, I believe, yes. So robins, again, a lot of the birds lay 4 eggs, so that'll be a full clutch. A lot of them don't start incubating until all the eggs are laid, so that all of them hatch at once. Some exceptions are things like eagles or owls that start nesting really early in the year, and if they didn't start incubating that first egg, what would happen? Yes, it would freeze. It just would die.
What are the earliest birds up here?
Up here, I would say some of the owls and eagles are really early. A lot of times eagles are nesting, starting to lay eggs in February up here. So, yeah, they're pretty early. And so they have to do that. And then as a result, you get eggs hatching out. They don't lay often an egg every day. Maybe the big birds every other day. So if they have 4 young or even more, some birds lay even more than that. Barn owls being a really common example. They might lay 9 eggs. And that might take them half a month to lay them up. So there's a huge difference in size between the youngest one that maybe just hatched and the oldest one. And in a good prey year, they all survive, and it's fine, but if prey is short, who gets the short end of the stick on that one? It's pretty obvious, so the little ones just, they might even get eaten by their nestmates if times are really hard. So anyway, I'll just turn this around. And these, again, are more birds that hopefully all of them build their nest not in a cavity. The western wood pewee. They're a very common bird. They're in the flycatcher family. That's probably, some of these nests that I've found, I'm making my best guess on because I don't absolutely know. But there are some really good nest guides you can get. Of course, the best way is to be out there while they're nesting, and then you can really make that association. But I'm thinking it's a western wood pewee by the size, where I found it, and then the rim has these, like spider, really fine material woven into the top. So yeah, I mean, it's just really neat the way different birds do different things. Let's see, this one looks again like a robin. Robin nests mud and long grass. So that's the main thing. You don't see a lot of feathers usually in a robin's nest or in one of these nests. Some nests, and we'll get to them a little later, have a lot of feathers in them, either from the bird that made the nest or the bird actually goes out and collects feathers. So it's kind of neat. You can, with certain nests, you can see what are the birds that are around here because this bird has brought their feathers in. It's done all the hard work. Let's see, a flycatcher nest. Again, the western wood pewee is a kind of flycatcher. These guys both nest kind of in a crotch of a tree. I just found these just knocked out of a tree. Or shrub, anything that's got like a lilac bush or anything. And again, I'm just guessing it's probably a willow flycatcher based on what it's made out of and where I found it, and the size. Those 3 things mainly. Let me see, do I have another? Oh, I think this one was it's a warbler nest, I'm pretty sure, and I think it's a yellow warbler. We talked about them being one of the ones that's onto the cowbirds, and so if they find a cowbird egg in its nest, they'll build a new nest over it. And there are pictures I've seen of a nest where that's happened like 5 times in a row. The cowbird and the parent bird, the yellow warbler, are both really persistent, and they'll just keep it, going until one of them, I guess, gives up. And then this one, Baltimore, well, actually, it's a bullock's oriole nest. They build a classic nest that hangs down from a willow branch, so it's always suspended from the upper edge of the nest. And if you want to come and look at it, but they're real distinctive. If you find one around here, you know that that's a bullock. One thing I will say about bird nest names, and bird names in particular, I don't keep up as well as I could with taxonomy. And so with DNA and all kinds of things, there's always a bunch of scientists that are figuring out who's related to what. I mean, that's interesting, and I guess I should say I care a little bit, but I don't care enough to keep up with it. So, like for instance with the oriole, they used to call them Baltimore orioles and Bullock's orioles, 2 different species. Then, probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago, they combined them into one species, northern oriole. So that's what we called them for a long time, but now they've split them back up. So,
It's good for theses and
yeah, well, that,
dissertations.
yes, and it keeps the book so yeah. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about cavity nesters, just birds that nest inside a hole. Who can give me a good example of a cavity nester?
Northern flicker.
Yeah, northern flicker. All the woodpeckers are cavity nesters, and in fact, they build the cavities. You can provide a cavity for them, like a bird box, and with the exception of a flicker, which will use them, they just seem like they have to build their own nest. So when you're out in the woods, it's usually in a dead tree, seldom in a living tree, but sometimes. But you'll see these holes, and big woodpeckers like pileaters build really big holes. And then the littler ones, downies, they build smaller holes. Okay, so they're all called primary cavity nesters. These nests that I have are all secondary cavity nesters. Those are birds that require or prefer an enclosed area, but they can't or won't build their own hole. So they depend on woodpeckers or in some cases, us putting up boxes. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But so on my place, we have probably around 45 bird boxes up, and I check them every year because it's kind of fun. Most of the ones that we have are used by tree swallows or house wrens, which we'll get down to there in this. But anyway, the tree swallows are one that, and sadly, this one doesn't have a lot of feathers, but they generally collect up all kinds of feathers. So we find lots of chicken feathers, because we have chickens too, in these nests. But also you'll find flicker feathers or owl feathers. It's just really kind of fun to see what the birds bring in. Let's see, house wren, the next most common nestor on our place. Their nests are categorized by pretty heavy sticks on the bottom. And house wrens will stuff every hole they can in their territory with sticks, and then just build a nest on the one that they actually use to nest in. So they're kind of blocking other birds from using their nest by stuffing the houses with the sticks. Let's see, what else we have? Not all the secondary cavity nesters are birds. So here we have a chipmunk. Chipmunks, flying squirrels, there's various different mammals that will nest in a nest box. And the chipmunks, they love to use the black moss or wads of grass, but you'll find all these balls of whatever material they use in there. And usually some fur, often droppings. They also not just nest in there, but they'll roost, that'll be their winter home. So if you do find a chipmunk nest, maybe it would be a good idea to leave that. Although I bet in about a day they rebuild. It's not a complicated nest at all. Let's see. Next is, bluebird again. Huh. I was very good about but anyway, so the bluebirds, we talked about that, nest in a box. A lot of times that size of box is just called a bluebird box. Even though there are lots of different things, the tree swamp, house brands, that use that general size of box. And then the last one we have here, chickadee. They resemble the chipmunk a little bit in that they don't bring in mouthfuls, round wads of stuff, but they like to build in layers. So whatever that is, one of their favorite layers is made up of disintegrated owl pellets. So you'll find this gray fuzz layer, and then a layer of moss maybe, and then a layer of really fine grass. So chickadees are also one of the birds, nuthatches also, that like to nest in cavities.
Jen, typically, how far do these birds go to get material for building a nest?
That would, for me, be a total guess. Their territories are usually not very big, though. So an acre, maybe. And that might be real big for some of them. Some of them, there might be 4 of the same bird on an acre. And so when we talk about a territory, that's what they would actively defend. So yeah, it's pretty close. They don't go a long ways. Now, a big bird would go a long way.
Yeah.
Kind of depends on what they find and what's available. But yeah, not very far usually. Let's see, and again, we talked a little about the flying squirrel. Same kind of thing as the chipmunk, wads of the black mosses. You know, that moss that kind of hangs down off the branches. That's what they were like. A lot of times during the day when you see a nest cavity or a box that's up high that you think something might be in, like an owl or a squirrel, if you tap on the tree, they'll often look out at you. So that's pretty cool. You know, you get little owls peeking out at you. House wren again, I think we already talked about that. We talked about this tree swallow. Same thing, the nest is mostly grass, but this one does have more feathers in it. House or English sparrow, they will use these sided nest boxes. And those, and like Ralph says, starlings are a couple of the undesirable non-native species, undesirable, say from my point of view, that I don't really want them to be using the nest boxes. Luckily, for whatever reason, we really don't have nesting starlings or house sparrows, even though they're around our place. We see them now and then. See them often, in fact. Wouldn't you say? I mean, you see starlings a lot. But they don't seem to nest.
Well, isn't that because, in the boxes, the holes?
The hole size is really important. So yeah, when we first moved to where we live now, I put up castor sludge boxes, and you know what was using them was starlings. So I just ended up taking them down because I just didn't want to encourage them. But if you keep the hole under 1.5 inches in diameter, that's too small for starlings to use their wings. Let's see. Oh yeah, and we already talked a little bit about it too. And then again, I borrowed this guy from Wallowa, and a hummingbird nest is an amazing, amazing thing. The way they use lichens, spider webs to bind it all together. They're really, really are a work of art. So yeah, if I'm going to go to Stanley's and look at hummingbird nests.
Do you have more than one, Stan?
No, I'm not sure why it's hummingbird.
Yeah, I thought in the current,
That was me.
oh, that was you, okay, I'm stupid, okay. But, yeah, I'm gonna stop, again, please come up, look at nests, look at any of the books you want, you bet.
I have a question about the bird boxes. When the flying squirrel presentation over at Wallowa, they were talking about they put up like flying squirrel boxes, and then we're finding that predators would just come along, stick an arm in, pluck out the flying squirrels, and go on with their day. Like, because they had to add apples at the top.
Oh,
Is
right.
is it just a big open cavity, or does it matter about
Well,
species,
designs
or-
of, yeah, different species. That's one reason why on most birdhouses, people will say, well, there's no perch here. Why don't you have a perch? Well, that just lets, the birds that are using it don't need the perch. They'll perch on the mouth here or just fly right in. But a perch will let predators do what you're talking about. Now, maybe to prevent that, you can also make them deeper, make the box deeper. That's the thing, whatever we do to try to duplicate, the ideal, the natural, there's also things out there that are trying to work around it. And so, yeah, predators are generally, they're pretty smart, and if they learn that this means food, they're going to check it out. And that would happen with birds as well as squirrels and bees. So, anything else?
Are there any of the birds that stay here during the winter?
Oh yeah, we have lots of, we call those year-round resident birds. Wallowa County, I think, has supposedly got something like 290 species of birds that you could find in the county. But the winter residents, is probably half that. What do you think, Rob? Maybe even less. I don't know the number. But yeah, we do have birds that live here year-round. Of course, they're not nesting year-round. Some of them would shelter in a nest box, and not very many, I don't think. So, yeah. Yeah, have you lived here for a while? I mean, just one
winter,
Oh,
last
okay.
winter,
So,
yeah.
yeah, and you'll see birds, depending on where you live. There are different species, that live in the forest or down in the prairies. And, yeah, we do have a lot of birds.
So, aren't there some, like, we have resident geese too, right? That stay
Yeah.
here year-round?
Yeah, we do.
And like, the migratory routes of, say, eagles.
Uh-huh.
So the eagles that nest here, what's their migratory pattern versus the eagles that nest, 1,000 miles
Right.
north of us?
I can only say what I've been told, but Frank Conley told me that the eagles, this was many years ago, the eagles that nest here are not the ones that are here in the wintertime. He said most of the winter birds come down from Alaska and winter here and then nest in
And
Alaska.
then less.
I really don't know if that's the case, because, 30 years ago when we moved here, there weren't any active eagle nests, blunt eagle nests that I know of. There probably were along the river or somewhere, but now there are a lot of them. And maybe that's changed. I don't know. What can you add to that?
Yeah, back in the early 70s, there were no eagles that we knew of nesting in the county. And I think we're up to a dozen bald eagle nests now, and maybe that many goldens. The rule of thumb with migration is those farthest north are the ones that migrate farthest south.
Oh, really?
So for many of the species, we're right on that interface. And our local eagles may go a little bit south, and they may not, depending on the winter. Kind of the same with red-tailed hawks are another classic. We see a lot of farther north red-tailed hawks that will stage through here, but they seem to be the ones that go the farthest south. And we always have red-tails around, and it seems to be our own local red-tails that hang closest.
And then the follow-up to that is, what are changing weather patterns doing to those migration patterns and the nesting pattern of any of these
Yeah,
birds.
well, that's
Are we
an
seeing-
ongoing question.
Are we seeing new birds nesting here now, or
Oh,
are we,
yeah.
or are we missing some birds that were nesting here 40 years ago?
Yeah, I bet we are, although again, who's paying attention?
Well,
Locally,
you-
it's not very many people are really putting the time into figuring that one out. But I think
You
it's.
hear about it
reasonable.
with butterflies more,
Yeah,
sometimes people
right.
say that, well, this butterfly hadn't.
Right. Can you think of a bird that nests here now that didn't say 40 years ago?
Collared doves.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just, I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
Collared doves.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There is actually a fair amount of attention to exactly that, and although there are no longer some species here that used to be here, we can't really ascribe it to climate change.
Right.
You know, some of the recent losses, you worked with the sharp-tailed grouse, that's a
Right,
recent
yeah,
loss.
could be all sorts of
Uh,
things going on.
And like bald eagles are a classic example of focused attention. You know, there weren't any here in the 70s. They'd all been killed out
Right.
from a bright, the same thing with peregrine falcons. And now we may have 8 or 10 pairs of peregrine falcons nesting in the county.
How are Franklin grouse doing?
Well, that's
Good
another
question.
one.
You worked on the
That's
Franklins.
another one. They, as far as I know, I haven't heard recently, they've always just been kind of there on the edge. Spruce grouse, or Franklin grouse,
Yeah.
and, or Fulton, a lot of people call them. They, I think this part of Oregon's the only place they live.
Spruce grouse have lost a lot of habitat to
Yeah.
logging and campers with dogs.
Fire, it's a little bit.
Fire.
Like the Lost River. You know, they're slow off the mark and dogs and kids get them.
But there could be, yeah, again, you know. Yeah.
Cedar waxwings they come late, and we had one, a number of years ago that nested
Mhm.
where we could see it.
Uh-huh.
But they come so much later in July.
Yeah, they do, they nest late. We have nesting cedar waxwings on our place. So, yeah, and they're thought bird when they migrate, they move around. a lot.
Yes.
So the ones that nest here are resident, or do they flock up and go somewhere else? Some
Yeah.
other
On
flock?
cedar waxwings, I don't know. I really don't. I would guess when you see those really big flocks, I'm just guessing they're from out of town.
I once read they're whimsical wanderers, so you couldn't count
Oh,
them.
there you go.
But that's been years ago.
Most cedar waxwings leave. The alternative that we see is it's the northern one.
Bohemian.
Bohemians come in from the farther north, and they're the ones we see around all winter long.
There's ones that eat ashberries and.
Yeah, waxwing eagle.
Janet, do you go through and take your old nests out of your boxes every year?
Oh, yeah, I did say I was gonna talk about it. Yeah, so I do, partly for the birds, partly because I wanna know who's using the nest and what, you know, how that changes over the years. But yeah, I do, a lot of boxes, there are many different designs. This one has a hinged front, and it should, when you put this one up, it should have a nail. I mean, this is too loose, and most birds would, you know, go, nah, not in a nest, you want more secure. But anyway, so to check it then, in the fall, you open it up and then just reach in and pull out what's there and figure out, if you want to, what was using that nest. Again, the diameter, we talked a little bit about the diameter of the hole is really important. Over time, squirrels, chipmunks will gnaw these holes bigger, and so they'll make them somewhat less useful to maybe the birds you're trying to promote. So that's another thing. The wood splits, cracks, you might want to, Ken puts on roofs on mine that, you know, where the roofs come off, or there's a lot of things. A snag is a way longer lifespan than one of these boxes. So these are nice to bring birds right into your yard or you know, promote something that you want. But as far as being a really effective habitat substitute, we don't need standing time, we'd be the last one to argue that. We kind of do, the birds kind of do need it. But yeah, I would say the size of the box, the height is usually not on songbird type. You can pick them up from the ground. A lot of the bigger birds, it's better if you climb the tree or at least use a ladder. But one thing about sighting boxes, and I'm really learning that now, is I could check them a lot easier 20 years ago. So there's some that I don't even check anymore because it's like, yeah, forget that. I can't get them. But anyway, so yeah, just keep that in mind if you put boxes up. Yeah.
Is there a directional orientation?
Oh,
Put a
yeah,
south, north,
yeah.
east, west?
North and east is the desirable in my book because the south and west is just, it gets hotter.
Too hot.
Yeah, it's too hot. But every situation is different, and you know, you can kind of tell where it's going to be hot or cold, or if you want to, let's say, you don't want it just facing right into a real thicket of bushes. You want some room in there so the bird can fly in. So maybe you want to set it so it faces a meadow or something. It's kind of site specific.
Is there a rule of thumb for the density, like how many of these you put out?
Well, Ken, maybe can you answer that one?
Oh, I did, oh, sorry.
Oh, the density. How close can you put them together?
How many in an
You can put them pretty darn close
Yeah.
for tree
I
swallows.
mean, ours can keep about 50 feet apart probably.
But that's, you know, that's pretty
It's
close.
arbitrary.
And they get used. They'll have a nest in them. But again, if in our situation with the tree swallows, if those boxes weren't there, where else would they nest? There's not many choices where we are. There's a few snags bidding up that, not very many. So, yeah.
So Jan, back to the big birds, ospreys are the one you see most prominently with the most open nests, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they
right.
find,
They do not want anything over them.
yeah, they nest on the light poles at football fields.
Right, and PP&L kind of hates them for that.
They what?
Well, they kind of hate them because, you know, they've been bringing these big branches and stuff, and it can fall down and short out wires.
So what characteristics, I mean, one, when you see that one like on the Lostine corner there, and you think, Jesus Christ, they got trucks driving by.
Right.
They got the wind and the rain and the snow and everything. I
Right.
mean, they're absolutely the most exposed. So what makes them site a nest? They gotta be, I mean, like up at the football field here, that's not close to, I mean, the lake is pretty close.
Right.
But it's still a couple
It's a
miles away.
ways.
Pardon?
It is a ways, but again, I'd say the nest site is what makes a big bird site a nest. Because they have a big territory. So flying to the lake,
It's no
you know,
big deal.
no big
Yeah, I've
deal.
seen
Right.
those ospreys, the lake, I mean, a football field come in and drop a
A fish
fish
in
in those nests, so
Yeah.
it had
Right,
I saw them go by with the fish just the other night.
cool, yeah.
They hit it, yeah.
It's amazing they can fly with that weight and that wiggly, you know, whereas they can.
Where is this nest at the football field?
It's up on one of the light poles at the Joseph High School football field,
It's
yeah.
up the east, or, I haven't looked at it lately,
Yeah,
but
it's in that, I think it's in the southwest corner, or southeast corner, southeast.
So can you just tell us real briefly that the Zoom wall, who's leaving and who's arriving
Oh,
now?
yeah, at the Zoom wall right now is Ralph, I don't know if he was talking to the whole group at that point, but the kestrels are really common out there, the sparrowhawks is what they
Yeah.
used to call them. Because they're all flocking up and a bunch of them will migrate. There will be some that you can see in the winter here. It just, I don't know individually if the ones we see in the winter are ones that just smartened up and what we don't have to leave. I don't know, I really don't. But one thing that's coming in pretty soon, maybe, and it's It's a little early now, but rough-legged hawks, that'll be able to zoom out as well as here in the valley. So if you see a hawk, a good-sized hawk with almost looks like a little bald eagle, a really light head, the chances are that's a rough-legged. And so they nest way north of here, they're winter residents. A few years ago, we had snowy owls out on the Zoom. That was cool. They nest way north also, but they were down here because the common, I think, what we think is the prey was limited out there. They couldn't find enough to eat, so they were looking, so they came south. But, you know, a lot of the birds that are real common out there, like meadowlarks, savanna vesper sparrows, horned larks, I see them year-round, but they're certainly much more common in the summer. They mostly migrate. But the other ones I mentioned will be gone. So, bluebirds, of course, they leave. What else? Some of the woodpeckers, the Lewis's woodpecker, they're migrating apparently. Right now, Ralph said he saw some down at Wallowa the other day. So they're coming through. Well, actually, leaving, but they might also be. Yeah, there's probably other ones. A lot of the raptors are here, the hawks and owls are here year-round.
And the water birds are moving now.
Yep,
right?
yep, the ducks would be, a lot of them are moving, a lot of the geese, are migrating, yep, the waterbird. The, shorebirds like killdeer, any kind of sandpipers, we have a lot of them. Well, we have a variety of possibilities, no really big areas of nesting, but things like spotted sandpipers and other ones, they'll be leaving.
How about the ouzels, the water?
They're year-round residents,
That's right.
so they don't. So often, if you ski along a river or walk whatever in the winter, you'll hear the best song. So yeah, that's a wild. Most birds don't sing.
And the harriers, the northern harriers, will they leave?
Oh boy, I've seen them here in the winter, but not here as much, so yeah, they'll leave. And they are one of the hawks that nest on the ground, which is kind of interesting. But, yeah, so if you're looking for a harrier nest, you have to be looking down, not up in the tree.
Aren't there some, what are the ones that are just really rare, but I'm sort of dumb about this stuff. That, like swans or something that appear on the lake every 10 years?
Trumpeter swans, probably, yeah. And I bet they used to nest here before, the pioneer times. It's
Oh, okay.
150 and older years ago, but now they nest either up north or in relatively undisturbed places like Yellowstone, which is quite a way south of here, so they could nest here if they had the right habitat. They need solitude though, I guess, and they're not getting it here.
Yeah.
But we do see them though. Yeah. Sandhill cranes, we see them summer, fall, and spring, but I don't think you've ever seen them in the winter. They go south. Yeah. Anything else? Well, come on up and.
Thank you very much.